3 o'clock. And a call to order the CMH Board of Directors meeting for September 30th, 2024. First on the agenda is the invocation. And I did want to start out by acknowledging and, pardon me?
It's away with you.
That's like deja vu.
I'm just not going to say anything because it's, yeah. Okay, so I'd like to acknowledge and
Again.
okay, would like to acknowledge and pray for relief and assistance for our fellow countrymen and women in the Southeast, including Florida, Georgia, Tennessee, and North Carolina, and any of your family members that might be impacted by that. My prayer for today is a prayer of unity. And so, Heavenly Father, please hear our prayer for unity. We love each other as you first loved us, and may we act with compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience towards one another from this day forward. We ask for your prayer and thank you. Amen.
Amen.
All right, next on the agenda is the CMH mission and vision statement. And the mission statement is Community Mental Health of Ottawa County partners with the people with mental illness, intellectual and developmental disabilities, and substance use disorders, and the broader community to improve lives and be a premier mental health agency in Michigan. Our vision is Community Mental Health of Ottawa County strives to enhance quality of life for all residents. Next on the agenda is public comment. If you have a public comment, please come to the podium. You have 3 minutes to speak and give us your name and jurisdiction or district in which you vote, precinct, I guess. Wherever you vote here in Ottawa County.
Rosalie Austin, City of Holland. This question might be answered as the meeting progresses, but I'm curious about the RFPs for the millage funding. I see some contracts are approved again for that, and that's great, but I'm wondering about like what is the process for getting other people to apply for millage funding RFPs, and how was that publicized? And is there a possibility for like a mini grant type thing like Wayne County does? I don't know how they fund it, but I would like to see like a Kira Cares account fund from the millage for unmet needs in memory of dear Kira. And you probably know what I mean.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Barbara Lee Van Horsen, City of Grand Haven, and the Momentum Center. I have much to share and celebrate with you today. First, I am very excited to share with you a significant milestone in our ongoing efforts to improve community health outcomes. I'm very proud that our research study on the impact of the Momentum Center on CMH consumers has been published in the renowned peer-reviewed journal, Global Journal of Community Psychology Practice. This study highlights the remarkable impact of our interventions on mental health, demonstrating not only improved health outcomes, but also substantial return on investment. As I've shared before, this study demonstrated that members get better while requiring less costly interventions. Indeed, it shows a return on investment of $4 for every dollar we receive from millage money. This result is a testament to the efficacy of our program and the dedication of our team. It underscores the value and efficiency of our approach, making a strong case for continued and increased support. The study was a collaborative effort, and I want to acknowledge the contributions of our co-authors, Dr. Travis Andrews from Then Atlas and Dr. Gloria Lee from Michigan State University. Their expertise and insights were invaluable to the success of this research. We're also deeply grateful to the Grand Haven Area Community Foundation, whose generous grant funding made this research possible. Their support has been instrumental in advancing our mission and enabling us to conduct such impactful studies. I'd like to emphasize the significance of these findings for our community and beyond. The evidence presented in this study not only validates our efforts, but also provides a robust framework for future initiatives. As we move forward, I hope we will be able to leverage these insights to further enhance the well-being of all the residents of Ottawa County. I also want to let you know that we have completed our capital campaign and the renovation of our Grand Haven location, and all member activities are now resuming on site. Please stop in and see what we have been able to accomplish with the help and support of our community donors and the incredible work of West Wind Construction. Thank you for your attention. I look forward to our continued journey towards a healthier, more vibrant community. If we work together, we'll keep gaining momentum.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to speak? Seeing none, we'll move on to consent items. The motion is to approve by consent the following items: the agenda for September 30th, 2024 CMH Board of Directors meeting, and the minutes for the August 23rd, 2024 CMH Board of Directors meeting. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there discussion or support? I'm sorry, support?
Second.
Second. Now discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, same sign. The motion passes. Next up is our Executive Director's report with Dr. Michael Brashears.
I usually say good morning, but good afternoon. Okay, so quite a bit to cover. I'll do it concisely. There are some items that I will be talking about that are not in your written version of the director's report. I will add them to it so to make sure it can be submitted with the minutes and available to the public. So a couple things. First thing is state level issues. The Board Association, our trade union, has released kind of a request for us to make a plea on behalf of the citizens of Michigan for the additional Medicaid dollars to be released from MDHHS. In your packet, under the director's report, I've put it's verbatim, their statement related to this, and I'll just read this so that people in the public can hear it. So this is what the Community Mental Health of Michigan Association has stated. As Michigan undergoes Medicaid redetermination, mental health providers across the state, including us, are facing financial shortfalls. The deficit, $52 million, facing Michigan Public's mental health system was reduced from $93 million after the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services announced on Tuesday that they would be sending out $41 million to the public mental health system. So what does that mean? At the beginning of the year, the state had budgeted for the system $91 million more than they released. They started the process of saying they weren't going to release the dollars at the beginning of the year when they were trying to determine the amount of Medicaid lives, people on Medicaid in Michigan. So throughout the whole year, us and every other CMH in the state have been working from a revenue projected shortfall because the state hasn't released the money they said they would at the beginning of the year. So what has happened? That left $91 million still to be released to the system. It's over a $1.2 billion system, so it's not still significant. And then last week they decided, yeah, we'll release some of it, but not all of it. How does that impact Ottawa? Well, right now we're projecting with different measures that you can have, expenditures and revenues, on our Medicaid side to be short around $700,000. That would have to be dealt with in Medicaid from the region. Any surplus in the region they give us and their surplus that other CMHs are showing would come to us. With this 41 million, it gives about a 1% increase. It kind of cuts our deficit to around 300,000. We still don't know where we're going to end up in terms of Medicaid revenue. We believe we're going to end up about even ultimately in all of our budgets and remain with revenue over expenditures. But as this document really goes on to say, this is besides the point. Even if they release the money that they owe us, this system is underfunded significantly. The providers in all throughout the state, most of them have not seen increases from the CMHs for years. The budgets have remained flat, even though revenue went up during COVID. Then everybody fell off of Medicaid after COVID because the rules changed, decreasing the amount of money coming to the CMH system. The demand went up, and the demand for services in the public mental health system is at its all-time high. And when you can compare the dollars that we get now, and you kind of you basically compare it to the equivalent type of dollars, in the past, we were receiving far less money per person to deliver a service throughout the state that has only gone up in expenditures. So we're advocating for the release of the additional dollars that they have withheld the state. It's about $51 million. And we'll be also advocating for an increase in revenue. We have no idea what our budget is for next year, and it starts tomorrow. Now, I'm told this happens every year, and it comes at the holidays. Our staff and our providers can't wait. We can't wait until after Thanksgiving to know if we can do increases for well-deserved services or to increase the service rate to meet the demand. So over the next several weeks, I'll be continuing an evaluation of what we really need as a budget and what we really need from the region and the state to have an appropriate budget. I will be releasing that number in October at our board meeting. So when you read through the director's report on this issue, it's not only did we not get what we were owed, the system is severely underfunded. The demand is at its all-time high, and providers have not, a lot of them haven't got increases in years. While CMHs and their staff may have gotten an increase, providers haven't. This can't continue in Ottawa County and anywhere else. We have to have parity in terms of how we deal with rate increases for both directly operated staff and for providers statewide. The board may not realize that 95% of all residential services are provided by contract providers. The CMHs themselves only directly operate between 5 and 6% of that in very few places because of the cost and the risk. Our residential providers are taking 100% of the risk and taking care of the most vulnerable. And we're going to have to make some tough decisions related to a fair rate for them over the next several weeks. We'll be doing this by asking for more revenue and then taking a look at our budgets. But I need to remind the board, the first meeting I was at as the interim, I declared a residential services emergency. It hasn't gone away, and we're still continuing to work on that. You notice in my director's report, I talk about the rate setting process with residential providers. I intend to finalize that this month to bring back before the board recommendations for what the rate should be. And then we have to get into the business of how we actually fund it. As a result of that, I'm recommending that we continue to use our millage dollars like we did last year for specialized residential stabilization services. I've sent out a request to residential providers that if they have need of those dollars to stabilize residential services, while we're trying to figure out what the Medicaid rates can be and should be, please submit a proposal. I review those and bring them to your attention for approval next month. That makes sense. So Ottawa's been doing a good job managing the money we have, but it's from a place of keeping everything the same, the status quo, the same level of services we're offering, the same rates primarily to all of our contractors, a slight increase for Ottawa County CMH employees. But the need is far higher than what we're providing. I continually hear from community members, how could I get in? What other services can we add? And we're looking at that right now. You'll have our annual report. We'll have our annual public meeting next meeting, and you'll hear the statistics from this fiscal year. How many people we served, how many people were assessed. how many people were denied services, what happened to them by population group. You will get a detailed report that looks at every population group, DD, substance abuse, MI adult, who came in this year, who asked for services and didn't get it, and what happened to them. As part of the annual report you'll get, as well as an examination of our expenditures and revenues based on population group. Next board meeting, we're going to have a series of 2 longer conversations. One is on the annual report. The other is about the millage. I promise this board, and I will make good on this promise, that I'll have a comprehensive strategy in how we fund and approve millage funding. I intend to hold a meeting this Friday as part of my executive director's talks on the millage. If you can't make it, I'll record it. But I intend the next board meeting to provide you the recommendation millage fund strategic planning and approval process, where our budget has revenue, what we've budgeted already for millage for this year, and what the future needs to be, based on a lot of the information we got early on from the millage steering committee and needs, our needs assessment, and other needs I've determined. Some of them are related to helping finding housing for individuals with autism or other needs that currently don't have that. That is a major part of it. I'll be offering also a second RFP for the social recreation programs. And I'd like to explain that. It's not in the description. We released in July an RFP for social rec programs to look at, and looking at increasing the providers than one we had. The process we utilized, however, did not get released to the general public in the way it needed to be. So as a result, most people had no idea we had an RFP out there for social rec, had no idea how to access it, had no idea what the parameters were, and had no idea that they could apply. Only people that went to a specific site that the county was doing the RFP process, and I'm not blaming the county. This is my responsibility to make sure the public understands and knows when we have RFP. However, our current RFP providers, our current social rec providers were aware that it came out and they applied, right? But nobody else did. As a result, I'm going to be recommending, and you'll see the details of that next month, a second RFP to give any organization that provides social recreation programs an opportunity to get millage funding for that program. You'll see in today's packet the recommendation to have contracts for the 4 existing ones, to maintain the current contracts we have, and I'll go through that more when we get to that on the agenda. But I intend to have a second RFP process for the social rec programs. I intend to make it very clear to the community what our millage dollars are funding, what the outcomes have been from the past RFP programs we have, and as it was addressed in public comment, how to get suggestions in for new funding. Now, there was a recommendation from the public to develop a fund for client needs based on cares, is what we're calling it. And that's to look at providing funds for consumer needs that might not be funded in honor of Steve and your late wife. That will be a recommendation we make in that packet next month when we go over all of the millage programs that I'm recommending and the strategy for strategic planning. This full board will be the millage steering committee. It's a funding source. We're going to treat it like any other funding source. We're going to have contracts approved by this body, just like any other funding source. And I intend to do that in October. It's going to be about a 45-minute presentation. I wasn't prepared to do it today due to the large number of contracts we had to get through today, but I intend to do it at our next board meeting, and I'll have information out on it by the 2nd week of October. And if you're in the public and you want to come this Friday, at 12 o'clock, I'm doing the Did You Know Executive Director Educational Talks. This week, it's focused on millage. What is it? What was the origination of it? How much money is in it? How do we treat it as a funding source? What can we do with it? That will eventually have a recording that will be posted on our website as well. So quick update on those things related to that. The educational series has gone quite well. We've had 3 of them. We've had one focus on Medicaid, one focus on state and local general fund, and one focus on the ever elusive CCBHC program, and which is really a funding source. I'm in the process of having those presentations, adding narrative to it. I didn't record them when they happened because the way that you do that, it would be unintendable. You wouldn't be able to really follow it. You would just have a screen and me talking, and you wouldn't be able to. So I'm embedding my narrative education to each of the presentations, and they will be posted on our website under the heading, Did You Know Educational Talk Series, and people can look at those. I think that the few that have been, I think they found it helpful to have these discussions, and it's something that I intend to do most Fridays. Not every Friday, I won't have 52 of them, but I'll bet you I'll have 36 of them or something like that. And we'll advertise the topics on Facebook, online, and at every director's report, I intend to give you a schedule of the next several. So the next one is this Friday on millage. And then on the 11th, I'm doing one on grants. What grants do we have? Do you know that our grant program is really ensuring that we maintain the community and community mental health? And doing an examination of our grants, just to give the board an understanding of how I'm looking at it, I'm asking, should CMH do this service? Is it part of our mission and vision? If it is, I don't mind looking at grants. If it really shouldn't be, I don't believe in taking federal dollars unless we need to, right? So I take that part seriously, and you'll be able to understand with the grants we have, how they're really connected to community benefits that our Medicaid program for mental health do not offer. And we can't use grants to supplant Medicaid either. So just, that's kind of the preview with that. Some of you have been able to attend, some of you haven't been able to attend those talks. They will be recorded.
Dr. Brashears,
Yeah.
point of information. Could I be added to that email? That I
Yeah.
know that Beth said that she was getting emails, so she's been trying to inform me, but I would love to be added to that.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
I thought you were. That was an oversight.
Um,
So the whole board, I've been sending out like, hey, reminders. So if you haven't been getting it, let me know. That means we have a problem, Houston. Right.
Yeah, some of them haven't, because I've noticed on my Did You Know and
Yep.
on our residential meetings that we were doing Zooms on.
Yeah.
I see only a handful of us on because I've been trying to
Yeah.
forward, but
Yeah, the residential meetings didn't go to it did originally, but those that are attended, I just added. I will make
Okay.
sure you have it. All right, so you're all here now. This Friday, 12 o'clock, if you can make it, at James Street location in our old boardroom. Okay, regional entity. Dave Parnham is one of our new appointees to the Regional Entity Board. He attended his first meeting last week. Thank you, Dave. Dave walked into a region that's $16 million in deficit. Dave's going to solve it all for us. 15 million of that is one of our partners, Network 180. They had a projected deficit at the beginning of the year of 6 million. It's increased to, for many reasons, up to 15 million. And there's enough money in the regional entities internal service fund to cover that. But if we were to cover that more than twice, we would have no Medicaid rainy day account or service fund to deal with over expenditures at the CMH level. I'd like to remind the public and the board that Ottawa County CMH is not allowed to save Medicaid dollars that are unspent. So what is the reward for managing your budget appropriately and having a savings? You give it back to the region to give to someone else or put it in the rainy day fund. That's the system we're in. So if Amy and our finance and the county and all of us don't do our budgeting to the T, we then have to tap into the regional entity or the Lakeshore Regional Entity, as it's called, kind of like rainy day fund to deal with that. The only reason why we have a lot of money in the rainy day fund was when there was COVID and there was a huge increase in Medicaid enrollees. We were able to add surplus Medicaid there. That has changed. So we have to be very careful on how we utilize the regional entities' internal service fund or rainy day fund. We can't just, as a partner, go, well, one of the CMHs has a huge deficit, just cover it. This board cut 1/3 of its workforce in 2015, 2016. I always forget the date, and Ann already tells me, right? We were asked to stay within the PMPM, the per month per eligible, our Medicaid allotment. We did it with draconian cuts to staff and the way that we delivered services. All of our partners have to be held to the same standard unless it would just decimate the service array for a particular county. So I'm telling you this because we're members of the regional entity, and I will not recommending lowering our current Medicaid rate from the region to help another partner unless you approve it and we feel we can do it. And you need to know how delicate of a situation this is. There is no way that Network 180 could cut $15 million without decimating its services. They could lay off every single administrative employee and not even make a dent. So there is a systemic issue either on revenue or expenditures that they're figuring out that's causing this. But this has been several years in a row. So I'll be calling on our LRE board members, myself, and educating you and keeping you up to date on this because this is 80-something, almost 90% of our funding. And like I said earlier, our providers are already significantly underfunded, and we need to use Medicaid to do this. We have to keep our eye on the ball here. I will be doing that. But that is, and from a risk management standpoint, our biggest existential threat is a massive regional deficit that can't be covered, and we exhaust all of our rainy day fund. The county, our county, shares in part of that risk. And I have to remind county commissioners and CMH board members that if we overexpend to certain percentages, we're on the hook to come up with those dollars. We're at a shared risk model with the region and the state, which means we don't have to cover all the deficit if we have a huge one, but a significant portion of it. And I intend to keep us in line with our budget so that doesn't happen. But Medicaid funding needs to be advocated among the public and our providers and boards for an increase in CMH funding now. Almost there. One of the things that you had, if you remember, was on old, should have been an old business, is the last board meeting we tabled a contract. Keys to Happiness it was. It was an outpatient therapy contract in Coopersville, and the board tabled it pending further investigation into due diligence on the contract. I've had an opportunity to talk to the owner, Sandy, on the phone and to review the contract in terms of doing due diligence. And she's going to give me some additional information related to the company. She herself is the clinical manager at the Lakeshore Regional Entity and had to make sure there wasn't a conflict of interest with her being the principal person on the contract, since she does do desk audits on our clinical medical charts. We are going through staff due diligence to see if the contract can be viable. What I was told today is that she doesn't intend to deliver any of the services herself at this point. However, she has people that uses her office in Coopersville and Allendale, where we need vital people that are independent contractors. So I've asked her to send me the name of the independent contractors so I can do due diligence on those providers and to see if they would be eligible to contract with us in a similar manner. But the contract was tabled appropriately so that I could definitely look at some due diligence issues and conflict of interest considerations. And as I just need some more time to finish that process before it's brought back to you for approval. So from the parliamentary standpoint, I don't know what to do with it, but here's an update on that. So it's not part of the contracts that I'm recommending approval today. Does that make sense? Yes. I also would like to finally thank the board for attending. We had a kind of a 2-hour work session, we'll call it, Either last week, the week before, they're all running together. And we were really focusing on the role and function of the executive director, the role and function of the board. Unity, as our chair presented today, as a way of this CMH board and your team, that's us, can work together to ensure that the citizens of Ottawa County get a center of excellence from a community mental health program. I thought the discussion was robust, honest, and I very much want to publicly say my appreciation of the candor and the spirit in which all of you engaged in that discussion. It made me feel like I made the right choice signing on as the executive director. I feel emboldened in terms of energy. I feel that we have a staff that are yearning to show excellence and a community that demands and expects excellence. And I think we're on the right way of providing that. So I just wanted to publicly thank you for your participation in that work session and to let the communities, we will have these whenever we need to make sure that we're all aligned, staff, the board. I am the employee of the board and I am the employee of managing the staff. And I take that job seriously and I believe you all do as well. So I just wanted to say thank you. And that concludes my report.
Thank you very much. Are there questions?
Just a comment, Dr. Brashears. First of all, just thank you so much for the explanation around the RFPs for the millage. I do appreciate that very much. As someone who sat on that committee, that was one of the discussions that we had often, if you recall, that when that was enacted in 2015 or 2016, that the landscape has changed a lot, and we really wanted an opportunity for more different organizations to apply. So on what you just talked about with unity and excellence, I appreciate you owning that because it takes a good leader to admit when we write. So thank you for that. And I'm sure going forward that we'll have that be different so that other organizations can have a little opportunity, because that really was a big deal. And I appreciate Rosalie, even, so hopefully I can't see you, Rosalie, but hopefully you're wherever you are over there. Hopefully that answered your question, because we, as a committee, we really wanted other organizations. So thank you for owning it and being transparent.
Welcome.
Other questions? I have a couple. So the Medicaid redetermination for mental health providers, were we given any rationale for why that's happening by the state? Do you know?
Well, it's a continuous process based on the ever-changing numbers of who's eligible for Medicaid. So it happens all of the time.
Okay.
And so it's kind of a moving target. And the problem we're having is that the actual base of it, the actual assumptions associated with how you're doing it, quite frankly, is a Kellogg's Cornflakes secret formula. In fact, we don't know all of the variables in which the state determines what our per month per eligible is going to be. They contract with the firm Milliman to do it. I've actually FOIA'd the Kellogg's Cornflake formula, as I call it, because it should be public. We should know every single variable in determining what our rates are. In fact, if I'm a member of the public, I'd be outraged that it's not public.
Well, how do you
So
budget?
certain,
How
listen,
do you
we
budget?
don't have Medicaid equity throughout the state. There are some CMHs that get more per person than we do. Last time I checked, the benefit was exactly the same. The criteria for Medicaid was exactly the same. So why for somebody, and I won't mention where they are, and some places in the state, they get far more money per person than say we do per the state with the same standards, the same requirements, is a puzzlement. So it's a moving target that's often redetermined, and they kind of see where you end up, and then they kind of release funds based on those numbers. And that's why we've had a delay in getting the full extra $91 million that were originally pigeonholed for this process.
I think we ran into the same problem last year too. It's like, quote, normal.
Mhm.
But it seems like that would be so easy just to do population and diagnosis, the number of people you serve plus, maybe acuity of the diagnosis to come up with what you would be reimbursed for.
The major variable that's not included is cost of actual care. What is the actual cost for care? And how do we get that information to them? We have cost allocation reports and all this other stuff. But I'm telling you, you got providers in the audience that will tell you, no one has asked them anywhere at the state level of what does it actually cost you to deliver the service? The state relies on 46 individual CMH boards to haggle our way to get the best rate from all of our providers, often in competition with each other. And I'm getting mad about this because it's infuriating. I am pitted against Muskegon, Kent, Allegan, my brothers and sisters in the region for rates for the same providers. And if I give an increase, I get all kinds of pressure from them. What are you doing? You're going to give, I'll just mention one, Benjamin's Hope an increase? Then we're going to have to. You're darn right you're going to have to.
What's their cost of service?
Right, but we think of that times 46. And that's the situation we're in. So instead of having what is the actual base cost for everything agreed upon within plus or minus a certain percentage, like any statistician, and I am one, can do, we don't do it that way. It's fend for yourself, contract for yourself, get the best rate, and you better do it cheap. And then we still won't give you the money.
I don't know how you budget under that model, honestly.
Ask Amy, when Mr. Rockman asked her how to define a healthy budget last board meeting, this is why she could say revenue is better than expenditures because it literally is complex math. You need to go to MIT every month. It's a miracle she can even give us a report that doesn't have purple, green, red, yellow on, right? But she sure does, doesn't she?
So the goal for the LRE is like, we want no Medicaid, ideally for us is like no Medicaid surplus. But that surplus goes back to the LRE. So we have a shared risk. And what I'm hearing
Yeah.
is that we have one participant in particular that consistently year over year
Yes.
has a budget.
Yes.
deficit.
And to be fair with that
Thank-
partner,
Yeah.
right, I will say this.
And I'm not trying to be unfair.
No.
You know, because if you've got a mystery as far as how you calculate, how it's calculated, what you're going to get reimbursed.
Yes.
Yeah.
That partner, let's just say this, revenue does not match the level of need in
That's what I
Kent
was-
County. Kent County Network 180, which has a large debt, it's not like they're sitting there just spending money willy-nilly, right? The demand has not matched the revenue. That's led to a cascading, or as we call it, waterfalling of incidents that have created a deficit there that any one of us would be challenged to solve, but we better do it. And we better do it all together.
You need a predictive model.
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
Yeah, with actual predictive features. And so I'm sure that Dave Parnham on the LRA board is going to solve all this for us. That's right. We'll give him a better per diem if he does.
Gretchen,
Okay, yes.
could I make a comment here?
Tom.
We had a neighborhood picnic yesterday, and since we couldn't talk about religion or politics, we started talking about mental health. And it's a safe topic. And one of my neighbors said, she was familiar with a regional provider who provides excellent service for folks on the autism spectrum. And she said, I have a sister-in-law who lives in another state who would love to move here and bring her two autistic children to provide the kinds of services we offer here in Ottawa County. Well, what do? Do I encourage them to do that? Or do I realize, wow, if I bring in two more Medicaid eligibles to the county, I get, another $1,000 in revenue
Right, right.
maybe for the CMH agency, but I'm bringing in two consumers with
Right.
high needs that we're not going to be able to serve because we don't have the money to do it. And the dilemma is, a lot of the money, as I understand it, is allocated on the number of Medicaid eligibles in the county.
Right.
We're a fortunate county, maybe, I don't know the
Right.
exact numbers, but I'm guessing 10% of our population is Medicaid eligible
Sure.
here in Ottawa County. Well, another county in an urban area like Detroit
Mhm.
might have 30% of their population on Medicaid. So they get a disproportionately higher
Sure.
allocation of the Medicaid dollars to their county. Now, do they have a higher percentage of their population with high MI and DD needs compared to us? I think probably the numbers are parallel. I'm just guessing, but we don't have that data. But we have proportionately more people to serve with fewer dollars than another agency in the state. And the answer is the money needs to be distributed by the number of consumers served and the severity of their need.
Yes.
And that's the dilemma we faced for 20 years.
Yes. There is no financial incentive for any CMH in the state to look for new clients.
Yep.
There's none. Isn't that sad? If we were paid fee for service based on standardized utilization norms, who gets in, and you delivered the service, we would be looking for folks every day. That's what we should be doing. I'd love to be able to say to anybody, come to Ottawa County. Why? We're a pretty cool county, and we're going to help you. Now, someone comes into the system, we're going to do the best we can with what we got. And, you know, it wasn't always like that in the system. It's become that. And so, yeah, funding equity now. It shouldn't matter where you live. Medicaid equity now. I did this 12 years ago with general fund, the same issue we had to deal with then, Tom. Right? We have to do it on the Medicaid side. It shouldn't matter where you live. I can do, as a psychologist, a prevalence rate on the amount of mental health and other things in our county. I can easily calculate that. I can calculate the number of people on Medicaid. I can calculate all that. I single-handedly could come up with a formula that makes more sense than this, that everybody would get the exact same rate based on prevalence rates of mental illness and other things you can do. It's not hard. It's politics. Simple as that.
Commissioner?
So along those lines, is there any conversation like this happening at all in Lansing?
It pretty much happens all the time. You know, Bob Sheehan, you had Alan here, his assistant. They're there every week, you know. What's needed is for us to get some legislators together, which we can do, and deal with, like we did this with general fund inequities many years ago on the Medicaid side. That just because you have less Medicaid lives in your county doesn't change mental health prevalence rate. How insulting to think that people that are poorer might have higher prevalence rates of autism, mental health, or substance abuse. I consider that insulting to the working poor. Mental health doesn't discriminate based on income. I wish it did. We'd be great in Ottawa County, but it does not. It is insulting to say if I'm on Medicaid or lower economic, that I should get more for my public mental health system because chances are I will have more of a prevalence rate. As a psychologist, I find that extremely bizarre. In my private practice, I didn't even ask what income branch because it didn't matter. So we can get legislators together and say, Medicaid equity now. It shouldn't matter where you live. It really shouldn't. The standards are the same. Same requirements, same obligations, different money. I don't know.
Any further questions?
Guys hit a hot spot on me. I got all jazzed up.
No. I think we need to seek solutions, that's for certain.
That's for
Maybe
sure.
it is meeting with our legislators.
One, Bradley,
You did, yeah.
yeah,
sure.
what's his last name?
Law.
Slaw. Yeah, he's interested in meeting with me next week and getting some folks together and talking.
I really think Luke Meerman would be interested too.
Okay.
Expect Nancy DeBoer as well.
Mhm.
Does Roger Victory have 2 more years on his term?
I think so.
That's how we did it last time.
Yeah.
We got legislators in there and,
Pull together.
yeah, pull an analysis of what we're not providing. See, we've done a good job managing within the budget we have, but it only tells half the story. We're managing within the resources we have, not what we should have. And that's a whole different thing. I mean, you know, you have to live like that, like in our own lives, you got to balance your checkbook, right? But the need is so high. There's so much unmet need we're not reaching. And I have to gather the statistics and the evidence for that. And that will take a little bit, but that's what I intend to do.
Are some of these educational opportunities helping you kind of build a portfolio or a plan that you can then share with the legislators? I mean,
Absolutely.
Does that be helpful? Yeah.
It would be.
And then they could have reference materials for later for whatever they've missed or.
Yeah.
Yeah, to use legislatively. All right, thank you very much.
Mhm.
Next on the agenda is old business, and I wasn't I wasn't present on August 23rd. But we did table an item, and so let me get to that. I think what we want to do is get a motion to take that item, which was to table the Keys to Happiness Counseling Contract as presented at the financial category of 50,000 to 250,000, to take that off the table. And then I think the plan was to go ahead and put it on the agenda for the next meeting,
Mhm.
October 25th. So that motion would be to take the tabled item, Keys to Happiness Counseling Contract, off table, and then put it back on as an agenda item as of October 25th is what's on the calendar.
Mhm.
Do I have a motion for that?
So moved.
Second.
Wait a second. And is there any discussion? We all understand. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The motion passes. Next on the agenda is new business. And the suggested motion is to approve the fiscal year 2024 August financial statement as presented. Do I have a motion? Support? Discussion. We have Amy.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
I don't want to belabor this because my understanding is we're going to be setting up a finance committee, hopefully with board approval. And these questions can rightfully be answered in detail at such a committee meeting. So I do have to confess that having spent a lot of time reading the financial report, I still don't know that I have the information I need as a board member in specific detail to understand category by category where we are relative to the budget. And also, just to give you an example, the bar graphs that are shown there on the first page for total Medicaid funding, expenses versus budget, don't cross-foot to any of the other columns. And I spent a lot of time trying to add different components to see if I could come up with those magic numbers, and I wasn't able to. So that's the sort of thing that I think we can handle in a committee.
So you're not wanting to discuss that now? Those are just kind of key concerns
Sure.
that you have going forward? Take note of? Okay.
I guess I have a follow-up comment about that. Maybe just to refresh my memory. Looking through the financials, I know that there's always seems to be like a discrepancy between, this is like drawdown as I understand it, and the actual expenses. And I believe this has something to do with the timing maybe of the drawdown and your deadline to do the reporting.
Correct.
Okay. And so that's really hard to evaluate to me, what this actually means. Yeah.
So one of the things that I talked with Dr. Bashir's about for the financial committee is to standardize all of those schedules based on the LRE payment schedule. Yeah. So basing our timing of reporting on the LRE's payment schedule, what has been happening in the past is we would, I would run this report after the last AP run prior to when the packet was being generated. But if we're going to standardize and we can have a standard reporting that should follow in line with when our payments happen from our drawdowns. What unfortunately, especially with fiscal year 24, where so many changes in that schedule based on state eligibility or state funding of the CCBHC program, both the supplemental and the base payments, they changed the timing of that over the course of the fiscal year. With some of the adjustments in the rate setting, there was some withheld payments and some overpayments that then created a deficit payment in the following month. So I think that that's a good exercise for the committee to have a schedule, and it will always be at this time. And so understanding that we would time it possibly, my recommendation is that we time it closer to 2 months behind, so that we'll make sure that the payment that we're reporting on and looking at the month in full, that's had the full accruals of all the revenues, similar to how the LRE reports are done 2 months prior, with maybe some sort of element of a current status of expenditures. So we're not looking at revenues to expenses as of last Friday. We just got a big Medicaid, we got our August Medicaid payments today. So, I put this together last week, Monday, and they posted payment Friday and it arrived today. So, you kind of see that in the revenue to expenditure year-to-date actuals on this August report. I think from the perspective of interpreting this fund statement and this summary for the mental health fund, it's important to keep track of the year-to-date budget. So our year-to-date budget is still ahead of our expenditures. We are coming close to that number, and as Dr. Brashears mentioned, we, anticipate a shortfall, but it's not something that it's in our spending plan to the LRE, so we should have that covered without an issue. It's something, you're kind of landing a plane, so we hope to be right here, and we want to be as close to right here as we're going to be. So hopefully that helps. Maybe answer some of your questions. Regarding the bar chart, I think one thing to note for the year-to-date expenses by primary program, this is just service activity. So it doesn't include any administrative costs. It's the cost of the service delivery. So that might help as far as if you're trying to crunch the numbers. It's not the full budgeted expenditures or the full total cost of expenditures. And I'm not sure if that's what you were referring to as far as the first bar chart, but it's kind of just to see from a visual perspective, the program size. Maybe I could do a percent rather than the number. The actual expenditure amount might be more meaningful. But again, an advisory group would be very useful to kind of talk through, like, what kind of things do you want to see? What numbers can we pull out? What, Dr. Brashears has already been doing that. Like, can you put a pie chart together for CCBHC or?
Right.
So.
Do you envision a different kind of reimbursement modeling, I guess, or is, I mean, I'm sorry, how do I explain this? So like with the way that we are reimbursed, I don't know, I mean, can you envision a way that we can get closer to, what they're,
I think the word would probably be better is alignment. Aligning how we're reporting things with the region so we're closer, and how we're reporting things to their methodology, and then determining the type of models that would be more predictive for us to see where we're going to land the plane, so to speak.
right?
Right now, when you go through all this, it's a series of pages with multiple colors, and you go, at the end of the day, are we all right? So we have to be a lot more sophisticated with that. And that's where we're anticipating the finance committee. We can have a lot of discussion about what reports do we want? How do we predict this better? What would the rest of the board like to see? And with 5 of you drilling down on that are really interested in those things, will allow all of us to have a better model for predicting revenue and reporting. Because when you go, I've been asking her, hey, send me this, send me that. We're creating these all the time. But I think there could be some streamlining of how we report this information that actually is more instructive to what's really going on. Did that answer your question? I think I answered
I
it.
think, yeah, I think so. And I didn't really pose it correct, the way I should. You did a better job of it. It's just more precision so that they can, that we're able to understand, are we on the right course? Are we on the right path? Is predictive. And then when is it that we should be concerned and start to intervene or look for solutions?
Yes, and the principles around that. If we notice certain trends within, say, more than one quarter, that's when we have to have some active movement. Because if you try to solve any deficit the last quarter, you can't do it. You have to cut 10 times as much just to make up the difference. So looking at the trending, the problem we have, and we'll try to get to solutions, we're never really knowing like what the revenue is. Just keeps moving.
Mhm.
So it's landing a plane in a storm. We hit the runway, but hopefully it's in the right city.
A point of order, if I might.
Mhm.
What is our requirement as a board relative to the finances of the agency? We vote to approve the financial statements as presented. Are we certifying that they are accurate in our vote? Or are we simply saying, we'll accept what you give us, but what are the consequences of that? For example, as I understand it, if we overspend our allocated Medicaid budget and the LRE doesn't have the funds to cover us, the responsibility, let's say for the sake of argument, it's $100,000. That responsibility to meet that $100,000 difference falls back on the county. Well, are the county commissioners then going to come to us and say, wait a second, how did you people allow this to happen?
Yeah.
To go over budget? Aren't you responsible for oversight of, and I don't know how at this point I could answer that if I don't understand the information that's presented fully.
Yeah, it's not, your obligation is not to certify, but to basically approve for these things that they were presented to you. And then ask questions on how we're managing it. Because you only have to approve the annual budget, right? And then any contracts that come through, right? It says approve those, right? And there's how you approve them, the methodology can change. Doesn't have to always be at a full board meeting. A lot of CMH boards, executive director just gives a listing of all the contracts that they approved. And the board doesn't even go through them or even have dollar amounts. We don't want that. But your obligation isn't the certification of them, but the acknowledgement of the receipt of them and to have discussions of the implications as a result of them. That makes sense. But annually, you have to approve the budget, right? And then any contracts is the financial piece of it.
Now, are our finances audited by an independent auditor, and is that
Mhm.
information presented to the board at some
Yeah.
point for approval?
Yep.
Good.
Mhm. Yep.
But just the way that payment is received, I don't think that you're ever going to be dollar for
Right.
dollar or cent for
Never.
cent until maybe end of year, but probably not even then.
Right.
Yeah.
And I will say, as far as being, having a deficit, that would be a regional conversation. We are delivering services within our, allotted administrative percentages. Our, managed care organization operates within our, standard, procedures. We follow, Medicaid, guidelines for reporting, for delivery of services. So ultimately, it's more a question of if there's money available in general, not that it was a budget that we under budgeted what our services were going to be. We bill those services to Medicaid. We should be owed those services if we follow all those rules. It's just a matter of if there's not enough Medicaid to be delivered around, it's not going to be just here at Ottawa County. It'll be a problem everywhere, because if those services are being delivered, in accordance with all the standards, we should be owed those services or that revenue.
The same problem that they have in health systems as well. We might
Right,
bill
right.
4,100 for a cholecystectomy, but it may be determined by the insurance product that we're going to get paid back 3,100.
Right.
It makes it challenging from a budgetary perspective, and why we end up with cuts oftentimes mid-year. So. Right. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Amy. Thank you so much.
Nothing
there-
more to report. I think we're even with the revenues below expenditures at the time this report was created. We are still expenses under revenues for the budget and in a good position. Today's our last day of the fiscal year, so we'll be closing out. We're starting reporting for all of our final numbers for grants, and we'll move on to are closing out our final year with providers and billing and collecting all that information. We do, our final, FSR is done at the end of February. So we have from now until end of February to wrap up all the numbers.
If there's no further discussion, the motion is to approve FY 2024 August financial statement as presented.
Oh, I do have one follow-up. I'm sorry. We didn't get to the contracted and direct run services by activity type.
Mhm.
And I see CCBHC, and I don't know if maybe I'm just misreading this, but it seemed like 175, 50. It seemed like underwhelming. Can you give me an explanation?
So actually, that is a calculated total of our daily visits. It's actually 17,550 daily visits, which is what we're paid in for CCBHC, and we record it as a penny service to get the daily count. I should have probably taken that one out, but the way that we're reimbursed for the services that are delivered using the CCBHC model, it accounts a daily visit, a unique visit per day per member. So for all the services that are delivered under the model.
Okay.
So we don't actually, that's not the earning of that program.
Would be
It's
the rate.
100% our delivery, and then we're paid based on the number of daily visits reported.
So is that a rate number or is that $175?
No, it's, that is our actual 1 penny count. So, our rate, we have a base rate and a supplemental rate, which totals, $415, give or take. The service itself would be reimbursed if it wasn't a CCBHC at like $197. And then like 213 is a supplemental payment to perform as a CCBHC. So some more fun math to put together. But so that is a little confusing. That we use that as a placeholder for how many daily services we record. So we know for the year.
And if you were able to attend the CCBHC talk we had last week, I was able to show you that nobody's funded the exact same way for this either. There are different rates for different CCBHCs per service. So we get $414 on top, for every one of those things, and some boards get 600, some get 300.
Track that variability.
Right.
So. All right. Any further questions? Right. We'll go to a vote if we could, a roll call vote.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Chris votes.
Actually, Mr. Clenchins can't vote because he's not present unless he's sick, correct? For our bylaws.
I don't have it memorized. Sounds
I-
right.
Yeah, the Board of Commissioners is kind of the same thing,
Mhm.
so. Sorry.
Here.
Yes.
Yes.
Right.
Motion passes. And next up is the fiscal year 2024 July LRE FSR. And this is information only. And Amy, you're up again.
Right, so, this kind of is even more, I think this is why it'd be best to have, some of our timing aligned a little better, but through July, one of the things that happened in June, our CMH adjusted our spending plan for CCBHC services. So in July, you'll note that our actual revenue to expenditures, we present the expenditure line and we have a projection for our year-end revenues. The revenues listed here are actuals that were paid by the LRE, so that is creating that deficit in the actuals line. Our projection, again, that's the LRE is projecting revenues needed at 40 million for Medicaid, and we're projecting the 50 million with some of that falling, or I'm sorry, 49 million with creating that roughly $700,000 variance. We'll kind of land that plane as it comes along, but this is kind of spelling out what is happening between our projections, the LRE's projections, where some of the revenues have hit. If you scroll down, CCBHC, the actuals, we've been paid ahead of our actual expenditures. So that's kind of a good thing. We are banking that money. It's something that creates a surplus there that will offset any shortfalls in Medicaid for the time being. And then we'll reconcile all of those funding types as we get closer to year end or the reconciliation and the final FSR. So again, in a healthy position for landing within, you know, a couple $100,000 between our projections and the LRE projections for Ottawa. So
Question, have we ever had to use surplus from the LRE since do you know?
Have we ever had to use the internal service fund
Yep, sorry.
from the LRE? That's a good question. I think that all of the members had to use it once or twice before.
Okay.
It got completely depleted. So I know that 2014, 2015, right around there, the years. The ISF, the Internal Service Fund, or the Rainy Day Fund, as I call it, is designed to deal with unanticipated utilization or exorbitant cost of services. So it's, wow, so many more people showed up than we thought, you know, type of deal. Or the price of something went up that no one could foresee. It's a vital part of it. Right now, we're in a debate in the state of how much can a regional entity or the LRE have in its reserve. We've been using, 7%, but it actually needs to be of our total Medicaid budget we should have in that. It actually needs to be a little higher if you do an actuarially sound analysis of the budget that we have at the LRE. We probably need more than what we have in there to protect ourselves against unintended utilization of over expenditures. And the state's trying to cap it at 7% only, that you can only have a 7% savings account, basically. Well, when you're dealing with $400 million, you can easily spend, you can really have some problems here. And so the PHPs are the regions in contract dispute right now with the state about the size of our internal service fund. How big should it be? You don't want it too big because you want all the money to go to services as much as you can, but you have to be able to deal with something like we're dealing with this year. Would say Network 180, if they have to use almost half of the internal service fund, if they repeat that, there's no safety net. And we'd all have to somehow recontribute to it through savings. So that's how I would answer that.
And it's gone away before.
Yes. It's been at zero. And our current regional entity director, Mary's done a good job, Mary Dumas, of saying a healthy region means healthy CMHs. If you take all of the rainy day fund away, there's no way for us to function as partners. We're then just continually cannibalizing ourselves with our partners. And like I was getting at earlier. So it's good to have a healthy rainy day fund at the regional level,
Mhm.
to deal with regional issues in funding and utilization as a group.
But if one partner has to use it repeatedly, there's a problem for them.
Yes, and then you look at why that's happening. You have to, you know, like this board did an examination of why it was happening. We didn't have the option back when we cut to get additional funds from the region to make us whole Medicaid. And the county offered no additional assistance. They said, this is the funding stream that you have to stay within Medicaid. You're going to have to cut to do it. Because the county wasn't willing at the time to shore up its department with additional funds. That could have been paid back later, but that wasn't the choice that was made then. The choice was to, within our own county government, stay within the PM of the region, stay within our budget. So I intend not to have us in that situation again, but if it ever happens again, I'd be asking the question of the county, what is your ethical and moral obligation to assist this department so that all deficits are not dealt with on the backs of the Medicaid recipients? That's what I'll be doing. But hopefully we won't be in that position.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely. Are there other questions regarding the LRE?
Could I characterize
Please.
something?
Please, please.
As I understand it, the third category down on that attachment B is your best estimate today as to where we will be relative to being under budget or over budget. And it looks like in the aggregate, you're thinking we'll have a $345,000 under budget situation based on
Correct.
today's estimate. We really don't know where we're going to be at this point because we're not in control of the demand curve. And if an extraordinary demand comes through for expensive services, that situation will change, right?
Correct. And one of the things with the change in Medicaid eligibility is that it's put more expenditures on our state general fund dollars.
Right.
Because we have people that are in limbo with their redetermination, that are transitioning from waiver plans, that or into waiting on a waiver. And so that's another thing I think regionally that, adding to the complexity because you have state general fund dollars that you use for some of these expenditures. Well, if they're all growing at the same time and you're really tightening your budget, it is landing a plane in a
Different
in a
Changing
cornfield.
every single day changing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the
And
general
you have-
fund
you
airfield.
have-
Yeah.
You have a compliance issue and we have to use state general fund dollars because we didn't follow the Medicaid plan. Oh, do we have budget for,
Right.
And our fiscal year ends September 30th?
today?
Okay.
Yeah. So when will we have the actual final numbers? Another
February.
30, 45 days?
No, so we still have billing. All of our contracted providers are billing through the middle of this month, and then they have 90 days from primary insurance billing to submit billing. So through the end of December, we are still processing any corrections or take-backs through the end of January. And then we have about a 2-week window where we put all the information together. So mid-February is when we present our final financial statements to the LRE. We have that audited, and then it goes to the state at the end of February. So we have a compliance exam independent of that before we cost settle. We don't cost settle with the LRE until April, May. So
Next year.
it takes a long
Yeah,
time
you're like
to,
6 months after.
but
Close.
today's the last day that services count for this fiscal year. So we just have to
Mhm.
get all the payments made, get all the takebacks taken care of, get all the money, get all the grants covered. Grants usually are done first, just based on whatever revenue we received and services that were recorded for the grant.
Having a 32-part series and.
Right, right.
Education series.
Right,
Yeah,
32 sessions, yeah.
32 sessions.
That's
Yeah.
session 11B in February.
Oh.
That actually is a good idea, though, now that I'll say it out loud, once we know what the number is, having one of those times where the public can come, like for 2 hours,
Mhm.
besides the board meeting, like, this is where we ended up. This is what it means. You
It's so
know.
value added though, even to have the sessions on the millage or
Yeah.
CCBHC or Medicaid. and-
Yep.
Yeah, so people do understand the complexities
Yep.
of how we're reimbursed for services. So, oh, great. Any more questions of Amy? Thank you, Amy. All right, next up on the agenda is the September 2024 service contracts, see attachment C. Dr. Bashirs is going to
Yes.
present those. but we
Okay.
Need a motion. Do I have a motion to, oh, I'm sorry, to approve the amended and renewed September 2024 service contracts as presented?
So moved.
Support.
Or now discussion, Dr. Bashirs.
Okay, so couple of new things. One, I broke out the approvals based on amended and renewed contracts versus new. This will be especially important for the Finance Committee, which I hope to have created today, so that you see the difference. So the first group is an attachment C, and it's the contracts we've already had approval once that we're renewing for the next fiscal year or the time there. They're also, see, that's my alarm. Okay. So Anna, you can't start our other clock until we get done talking. Okay. So we're starting to color code stuff where amendments will be in like this brown color and the renewal will be green. And the green signifies you've already approved this contract once before. Now, I'll go through them in general what they are, but I want to just address an issue that was brought to my attention via email by Mr. Rockman. That was a very good series of questions that I didn't have the chance to answer in writing, so I thought I'd do it in public. The question is, Dr. Bashirs, our role as the board is to help approve the process and to ensure that you're doing the process of renewals. We're talking about renewals in his email. What are the metrics that we have to determine if a contract should be renewed? Stephen, I'm paraphrasing, but that was kind of like the essence of it. How do we know that a contract should be renewed? Is it once you're contracted, you're forever on the panel because we're just thankful that you'll be a provider? That's one variable, right? But you know, Stephen, I couldn't comprehensively answer that question in a way that I felt adequate. So I'm going to tell you what we're going to do in the Finance Committee and for the full board. We will develop a very specific checklist of items of any contract to be renewed to look at the following. What was their performance based on the contract terms and conditions? What was the utilization of services? How many services did they provide? Did they meet any performance objectives? If they were asked to do so, if not, what should they be? At this point, Board Member Rockman, I don't believe that we have a process that I would say is comprehensive enough for me to feel confident that I could answer your question. And it will be the task of the Finance Committee and the full board to review the methodologies we use. Of course, we check compliance. We do a very good job with that. We have a very good compliance department. By the way, it has one person in it. Okay, with some help. We have a good contract manager, Bill, that looks at this. We have good program supervisors that looks at all of the providers that we have. But we don't have in one place an auditing tool that I think is adequate for me to answer Mr. Rockman's question of, should you determine a contract besides they're in compliance with things, not on the news, not on 60 Minutes, and are willing to do it at the rate? That should be the floor, not the ceiling of excellence. So we will be developing the contract renewal checklist that will look at, did the contract meet the terms and condition of the contract? Yes or no? Were there any number of incident reports, things related to that, or critical incidents related to the type of service? If so, is there efficient remedy of those to feel that we could go forward? Were there any performance measures for each contract that's outlined in the contract? Yes or no? We will put together this checklist and start using them in November. So what do you have before you? First of all, I'll ask in open forum. Stephen, does that answer your question in a way that you feel okay moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, I look forward to having an opportunity to participate in that committee,
Yes.
find out the answers to these questions.
Yes, you'll get a chance if you're selected to that committee, and I have a hunch you might be, to help determining some of the areas we should look in. That's a governance board. What are you looking at and how are you doing it? It's my job then to execute those principles and apply them to the contracts and the processes within internal CMH, so you don't have to. So we have to get to that point, or you're going to continuously be like, I don't know, I guess it looks fine. That's not what your role is. But your role is to help us with the governance piece of this, and I intend to have you as a vital part of that discussion, any other board member that wants to be. So what you have before you is a list of 17 contracts you've renewed. If you notice, we added some columns. If you look to where it says financial risk threshold, this is one of the areas where you all were like, okay, what's budgeted? What this really is how much potential risk, financial risk, do we have as a board? It could be from 0 to 250,000. Good God, how do you budget that? So if we actually know the dollar amount, you'll see it to the column to the right of that, budgeted amount. So if you look at Cherry Street, which is a millage funded program, part of it is millage funded program, that's our clubhouse. We already know that we're not going to spend no more than $60,000 of that funding source there. But the threshold, the service type, if it wasn't budgeted, could balloon up to that level based on utilization. So if we absolutely know the specific dollar amount for a specific contract, and it shall not exceed it unless we get a budget amendment approved by you, you'll see that in that column. The financial risk column is a county-driven thing too, and it helps us determine what type of risk are we exposed to. And this should help clear up some of the confusion that we've been having. So if you look at like, I'll pick one, contract number 6, Tri-City, YMCA, it's a grant. We know specifically we'll spend no more of that, but the kind of category of funding, there's a potential risk if you didn't have a budget of up to 50,000. See how that works? If we don't know the number, the budgeted number, we'll put fee for service or some other descriptor in that budgeted category. So if you look at contracts 11 through 17, they're all hospital contracts. They're all inpatient hospital contracts we have to have so that we can send people to the hospital, admit them, without paying a huge day rate. If we don't have these contracts, we'd have to pay a single day rate for each admission, which is usually twice as more expensive than the contractual rate that you can get by negotiating it. So you'll see it says fee for service, but if we had a huge utilization of hospital, it could be up to 250,000 or more. So that's a potential risk there. So that's an example where we can't actually tell you the budgeted amount because we hope that no one utilizes it. Yep.
You have historical numbers so you can average out?
Yes. What we can do is put what is our utilization rate with any contract amendment that comes forward in the future. So you get that information. So Michael, you're saying it's a risk of up to 250,000. What was it last year? Well, it was $90,000, which equated to like 16 people for like 20 days or whatever it is. You'll have that information moving forward. So you see the utilization of these things. So you get a picture of it. Because sometimes you've been asked to vote on contracts, you have no idea, like this is just to have the option to use it, or this is a specific amount based on history. And that's been very confusing. So what I did here is that through 1 through 17, you have those areas. Contracts 11 through 17 are hospital contracts. These are renewals for inpatient hospital and community contracts for hospitalization. And we have, what we don't have on this, which if the board wants and finance committee we can do, is the actual rate we negotiated. That's one piece of information I think the finance committee would like to see. What is the daily rate we negotiated on these contracts, right? So it's not on this list, but it will be.
Michael, if I could
Yep.
ask a question,
Mhm.
just to show how difficult it is to project this. A consumer comes in today in crisis. We determine they need inpatient psychiatric care. We call Holland Hospital and they say, we don't have any beds available. Well, now you have to go to another provider. So you really can't accurately predict, even if you knew how many people are
Right.
going to come in the door needing a particular type of service, you still can't predict which provider you'll use until you actually start making the phone calls.
Correct. And that's why we should probably include on an annual basis, the utilization rates. To get a sense of how much of that kind of
In the
issue there
aggregate.
is. Yeah. So we'll be able to say like Holland Hospital, we're renewing the contract. Last year, we had X amount of days authorized at this rate. We're anticipating relatively the same utilization. So you see those ranges come to life. Right now, you don't see it come to life. You just see, oh, could be up to 250,000. I hope not. So what was it last year? So what I'm saying with renewals, we need to provide a whole other layer of information in terms of utilization, performance. You know, some of the providers in the audience, we don't even provide like bonuses for excellence. We should do that. Incentivize excellence. Yeah, right. So, you know, those two would do well. But, you know, the issue is, that's the type of level of sophistication we have to get back to. We have it in various forms within our organization. We just haven't brought it together in one report to the board. There are certain folks that can internally tell me utilization, but you should have those numbers on any amendment. So moving forward, you will. We'll be able to, you know, go over in finance committee and then kind of have that, then you get a better sense of how much of the thing are we using. So today for these first 17, these are all contracts you previously approved. The funding sources are they're in the second to the last column. And is the contract amount included in the budget? It's always yes. You won't find things on the renewal list that's not in our projected budget. That's why they're like, yes.
Based upon historical usage then? and
Yeah, we try
utilization?
to, yeah.
Yeah, because I can't imagine trying to
Yeah,
sort this
we're
out
still
with-
trying to get
with
to
a
the level
range.
of specificity of the service type and what type of budget it is and how we manage it. So like big services like CLS or hospitalizations, we still have bigger buckets in terms of how we're looking at the budget. I want to make them smaller and have more people responsible for managing within those utilization expectations for a budget. So I can answer any question to any one of those. They are renewals.
Are there further questions as I'm watching it flip through?
I have a question about the state of Michigan
Yes,
rehab services.
yes.
It's a state, you're negotiating with the state, I guess, for this contract. It's a state contract. Is there much room for negotiation? I really don't know the process of how we create contracts. You know, we're a government agency with the government, or is it kind of presented to us like an adhesion contract, take it or leave it? You know, is there a
Yeah.
lot of room
Yeah,
there?
so that one is, it says state of Michigan, but it's the Michigan, it's part of the MRS kind of for employment services for youth. So it's that branch of it. And that 30,000 is actually just a match to bring down another $90,000 from them to offer supportive employment services for youth, primarily in the ISD and other folks to go to MRS for employment services. So you're not really negotiating because it's part of a match grant to them. It allows them to provide 3 times as much services on our behalf with our $30,000 match. So I wish we could negotiate the match. I'd actually invest far more. I'd say, let's do 100,000 and pull $300,000 worth of supportive employment services for kids with autism and other things in the ISD. So I wish we could. In fact, I'll try to ask them next time if we can do that, but that's kind of historically where we've been. We give them 30,000, we get over 100,000 back. And help with supportive employment services. But that would be an exact contract I'm talking about. If we had the utilization numbers, and you can see that, that led to 25 kids having a job or this or that. You'd get a sense of what it is. Right now, it's just a number on a page. And I'm saying, trust me, it's doing good things, right? So that's the type of detail we need in some even our one-pagers of what happened with it. Like, so you had it last year, what was the results? That we'll have to add, because right now you're kind of at a disadvantage in looking at it.
Any further questions? Suggested motion is to approve and amend the renewal of September 2024 service contracts as presented. We'll go to a roll call vote.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Motion passes. All right.
Thank you.
Let's see.
All right.
Duplication here. September 25 contracts. And we are going to, it's next up, we've got a suggested motion to approve the new September service contracts
So
as
moved.
presented. Is there support? And is there discussion?
The only discussion, I'd like to offer some information, if I may, quickly. I know some people have to leave at, I think,
Right.
5. right around
Another
there.
board meeting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Another board meeting.
Yeah, all right. So what we have here, the first one is a new inpatient contract to expand our service array. That's why it says fee for service. I want to talk about the social rec programs. Those are items 6, 7, 8, and 9. We did an RFP process, and we gave each organization the ability to submit a budget based on the criteria of the RFP up to $250,000. So one of the questions I got during last week was why do you have different various amounts? It's based on the anticipated number of people being served, what they presented, and what they would think they would need to run that program. If you were on the millage steering committee, it's almost virtually the same amount of people each of these 4 groups were planning to serve, right? But we did lower the amounts by, the cap used to be much higher than this, used to be about $50,000 higher than this. And all of the programs produced a budget that was less than before. And we added some other thing. One of the analysis that we'll be doing during the year is how to convert or look at how to convert this from a contract that pays annually to a contract that pays based on the actual individuals served, having the money follow the person. So say Robin wanted to go to the Momentum Center one day and then go to another social rec the other, the money would follow Robin or Beth or Donna, instead of having a set amount, right, for a place regardless of the number of people going. Now, I decided not to have that element of it in this first go at it because I don't know if the model's feasible. So for the first 2 quarters, I'm going to be doing, and I've met with all the providers that tell me this, I'm going to be doing an analysis of the actual amount of people that are coming and the impact to their program. What would the daily rate have to be to stay within their budget? And how many people are actually attending? Now, we get that information now, but we haven't applied it to a funding. Now, with the second RFP that I'm going to send out for social recs, I'm going to say we're going to pay something like up to $50 a day per person and try that model from the get-go. But that will be for providers that probably already have something existing and they just want to expand who could go there versus starting something from scratch. So the reason why these 4 millage programs, social rec programs, didn't start off moving immediately to the daily rate per person thing, I need to see if it's feasible so that the program doesn't fall apart while I'm testing out a feasible model or a fiscal model that we might find out that it's something like, boy, there was the flu for like a week or 2 weeks and several people didn't show up. Boy, if we were doing the daily rate, here's what the impact would have been. So I need to do some due diligence and statistical analysis of moving the system for the existing social rec programs to a per person per visit model. But I want to do that out of the get-go. I wanted to award the RFP, measure the impact of that. We're also looking at other measurement things that we're putting in place. One is looking at the number of people that attend social rec and their overall quality of life. We're going to be implementing a quality of life measure to answer the question, does social recreation increase someone's quality of life? Either the guardian or the recipient can answer that for them. The other thing we're going to be adding is, what is the impact of social recreation programs to crisis services utilization? Is it a protective factor? If people go to, say, like, I don't know, Compassionate Heart Ministries, does that keep them out of crisis residential programs? My hunch is it does, by the way, but I want to empirically validate it to show that social recreation should be a standard program that is offered at CMH that eventually should get off the millage dole onto something else, like if we have an increase to general fund, or if we can make it somehow a Medicaid service. Millage funding wasn't, in my opinion, to be done forever for each program. And so we got to find a way to strategically do an analysis of the programs that utilize millage to get them off the millage dime, so to speak, to give other opportunities for other chances to be realized. Now, if I would have been appointed, if I would have started not in July, if I would have started in January, for instance, I would have had enough time, to be honest with this board, to do this evaluation for this RFP. But I was interim director and then appointed permanent in the middle of the end of the fiscal year. And I just thought it was too much of a risk to ask the current social rec programs to move to a different funding model without an analysis. To me, it would have been irresponsible to do that. So I will be studying it aggressively and giving the results to this board every quarter of how we're doing it. So the dollar amounts are relatively the same, but reduced for the same budgets they had last year, okay? And I'll be happy to announce that one of the programs has pretty much decided they're going to still have, I believe this is the Momentum Center, that even though they had a budget reduction, they're going to backfill the rest of that with the money that they fundraise, so they don't have a reduction in staff or any other issue for the social rec program. In fact, Momentum Center reported one of the questions we asked all the social rec programs is, are you sustainable without our funding? And according to what I understand, is that millage only accounts for 43% of Momentum Center's total budget. If the social rec program went away for any of these folks, the millage went away, they'd have to determine how they would do it and if they would do it. But not one organization should close. So this board should not be subjected to any party coming to them saying, if you close my social rec program, my organization is going away. That is not a fiscal reality. The social rec program may go away, and that's a problem. There may be other options, right? But that was one of the concerns this board had. If we eliminate the program, does the organization go away? I'm proud to report that none of the organizations selected said that would be the case, and not even close. Like any funding stream, they'd look at how I keep it going without you, but their intentions would not to say, and it no longer exists. So that was part of the things I was asked. I remember Donna specifically asking that. We got to get these folks to a point where if millage goes away, they'll attempt to do it, we'll find other funding sources, but the whole organization doesn't shut down. And we have to increase choice of provider, which we did not do with this RFP process, when we're going to have to remedy that next month when I come in with another proposal. Because that was one of the major points of the millage that I failed to ensure happened during the transition. And I will fix that. But that's what those major contracts are. There's another one that should give you sticker shock. And that one is number 3, Peter Chang Enterprises. And it's for $377,000. I'm recommending that we change our EMR, electronic medical record, from NetSmart to PCE. And that cost is the implementation cost to put in a new system that would start to be put in November and done by July. That cost is actually a gigantic savings that this organization is giving us to implement their system. So why PCE? Why this electronic medical record system? Out of the 46 CMHs, 44 of them use that system. So all of the accounting, all of the clinical documentation, all of the standards for CCBHC, for all of these various fund services are already built in the PCE system. In fact, if Amy and my staff would have had this system already, I calculate that we would have saved at least this much money in billing third-party insurers and billing appropriately the state for CCBH system. My staff have to do it by hand right now because our current system doesn't do it. So all of these funding streams, they have to calculate in a spreadsheet, send independently, where this system does it automatically and the state uses it as the primary CMH system. So every time they implement the change to a new assessment tool, guess what? PCE has it built in. Guess who doesn't have it? Ottawa County CMH. We have to have a workaround. Just the workarounds for our current vendor would cost far more than what's listed here to implement. And this ends up being, believe it or not, cost neutral of what we're currently paying the current vendor to what this would cost and then the monthly fee for the next fiscal year. Here's the other component of doing this. I know I'm overselling it. I might have held you at hello, I don't know. But I'll tell you this. We have a lot of new employees within CMH and key positions, contracts, finance, IT, been here less than 2-3 years. They need to, none of them know the current system we have, just like the people that were here 5 years ago, 10 years ago. It's actually an advantage for us to learn a whole new system together as a team to understand all of the intricacies related to clinical documentation, finance as a team, all in equal standing. We just hired 2 new IT people. I don't want them learning a system that we're not going to utilize in a couple of months. So believe it or not, usually these things like, oh boy, you're going to do this now, change your whole system. It's actually going to be a unifying factor for us at Ottawa CMH. And the region is begging us to do it because we're the only CMH in the region that doesn't use this. And don't worry, I'll be asking them to help pay for it. So that's what that item is to change our electronic medical record system, billing system, and compliance system to a system that 99% of the CMHs use it. The one that's not, I'm going to talk into using it, and then maybe we'll get another discount. But that's what that is. Because I don't know if you would have read that, go, what do you mean? It's a comprehensive change to our electronic medical record and billing system that's totally compliant to all the regulations we have. That's going to save duplication and save us cost. Just having the presentation, the staff are like, it can do that? Really? That takes me hours. I can press a button. You mean I can check third-party billing, private insurance with the button press? Right now, we can't. We have to manually do it. We have to look up in all these systems. You have a question?
Yeah, question. So say that a person comes in, but they want to have it on paper instead of electronic so that they can see it visually because
Yes.
sometimes computers don't always work and they shut down randomly.
Yeah, paper is available. I'm a paper person. Just ask my deputy. I print everything off. I read it. Okay. paper. If you can't print it, I don't trust it. Just to be honest. Does that help? All right.
I
I'll
thought you-
entertain any other questions.
Yeah, I thought you had said that there were incentive dollars offered if you did transition to this
Yeah.
particular EHR. So I'm really happy that you did your employee satisfaction survey in August because
Yes.
these are pain points when you make the transition, but it sounds like you're going to have some real benefits.
This is one of their
Yeah.
top priorities they wanted. That and
Awesome.
space.
Yes. At that, we are looking at that. So,
Yep.
all right. Any further questions or statements? Is to approve the new September 2024 service contracts as presented. We'll go to a roll call vote.
Yes.
No. Yes.
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 Yes. Motion passes. Next on the agenda is general information, comments, and meetings attended. I didn't write anything up about this, but I have to mention that Momentum Center, or not Momentum Center, I apologize. Momentum Center had a wonderful outcome as well, but I went to a gala for Compassionate Heart, a fundraising gala, and Donna Bunce wanted to make the evening fun, but it was also incredibly inspiring. And I'm hoping that you have raised enough money for the audio equipment, AV equipment that you need.
Thank you.
How many people do you think attended? Did you get a head count?
270 maybe?
Yeah, it seemed like,
Yeah.
it was
Thank you.
spectacular, beautiful evening as well.
Thank
And it-
you.
Yeah, and she wanted to have fun, and I would guarantee you that everybody had fun while there. So next up is public comment. And if you are interested in coming and speaking to the board, please come forward.
Oh,
shoot.
I want to thank you for your continued discussion and evaluation around this crisis. At my recent board meeting. Ask them if we have a
Meaning, is there a point at which funding dips to a point where we have to make a decision that we might not be able to serve an individual who calls Ben's Hope home? Now, we didn't make a decision, but I share this with you to help you understand the critical situation that providers are in at this point. We are implementing a wage increase that starts tomorrow for 80 cents. And we don't know what our budget is either. So I don't know how much of that might be covered by revenue from the counties that we serve, 5 different counties. But I will tell you, 80-cent increase will cost Benjamin's Hope $90,000 a year. We anticipate that 22,000 of that will come from the DCW pass-through. And we anticipate that we will have to raise $68,000 a year. So when I pose my board the question of, do we have a line in the sand? The question is really the balance of paying our staff the wages they deserve for the hard work that they do and preserving the home for the men and women that live at Ben's Hope. So I say thank you so much for the important consideration around this issue.
Thank you. And I did jump ahead because we were supposed to do a board subcommittee implementation. I apologize.
So before you is the recommended process of forming the finance committee subcommittee. And I believe what has to happen, and you could do it now, or I guess you could do it now, and I didn't put it as a motion because I wasn't exactly sure how to go about this. I had to look at Robert's Rules of Order and all kinds of other stuff, is that you actually have to select, you have to take nominations for a chair and then nominations to be on the committee. I'm proposing a 5-member subcommittee. You only need a majority to be present for a quorum under the rules. And I'm recommending a meet monthly, a week before the regular board meeting, a date and time to be determined by the members with me. And the main scope would be to review and recommend all service contracts for approval to this board, and to review and recommend all the financial statements and other financials to the board for recommendation as well as developing any kind of operating guidelines or anything else you'd like us to do related to finance. So I think what has to happen, and I didn't get a chance to talk to the chair, is the chair, you have to entertain the nomination for chair, or you could appoint one. It's either up to you, and then seek interest in parties for membership and have them approved. I don't believe this goes through the county process that they have of doing this, but I will double check just to make sure later. But I think we can go ahead and do it now if you want it.
I look to the board. Is there anybody interested in being chair of the finance committee, subcommittee?
Or somebody else can nominate somebody else. Are there any nominations?
I'm chair of 2 committees already. So
I
Ed-
nominate Stephen,
Bachman.
yeah.
So technically in the Robert rules, you say, are there any other nominations? You have to say
Yeah, are
3
there
times.
any other nominations? Are you interested, Stephen? Before I close that one?
Well, I mean, I'm struggling trying to accommodate that responsibility to my new home responsibilities.
Right.
And I would really like to be on that board as a member. I'm concerned about being able to deliver this, the quality of dedication that is needed for this to be successful. So if I have to be, I will, but might want to express my reluctance for, given my situation.
Would you prefer to be a member?
I would prefer to be a member. I think I could accommodate that better with my home responsibilities.
Can I make a nomination of Tom Bird
That's what I was.
and
gonna
ask you if you'd be interested?
Madam
I
Chair,
know.
I'm in the same situation
Situation.
relative to personal responsibilities.
Sure.
I can rationalize being a member of the board, of the committee, which I would like to do if I can,
Okay.
but I don't know that I could handle the full responsibilities.
Chair. So I've got 2 members so far, which is good.
I was going to nominate Mr. Bird too.
Mr. Cosby.
Yes.
One thought is would it be possible for us to actually take this up next month instead of this month so that people
It's completely
can
up to
think
Dr.
about it and
Bashir.
consider it? and,
Absolutely.
I think we might be in a better position to make that decision next month.
I'm
Unless-
definitely
unless
open,
other
as long as
people
that
are
works
ready.
out for the
It
timeline
does.
that Dr.
I can start
Bashir
it
has ahead of us.
I can start the process whenever, and I can come fully prepared next month with other items for the full board to
Okay.
look at, to get a sense of it. That will give me time to convince you to be on the committee.
Yeah, so I was gonna say, they need to sell this. Yes, definitely. We've got 2 members already,
Yes.
but yeah,
Yeah,
we need 3 more.
as
So-
Meatloaf said, 2 out of 3 ain't bad, but we need 5.
We know what the other committees are as well?
Yeah, what
I
I've
think there's
decided,
probably more.
what I've decided to do is start with this one. I was going to recommend developing a program planning quality committee. Because of the newness of a lot of board members, I want to bring all of those items here first for about 6 months.
Okay.
And then we'll be able to really see what needs to be broken out in a subcommittee, looking at quality measures, new programs, those things. Because some of you might enjoy that far more than finance committee. We could also make it a 3-member committee if you want, doesn't matter. So we can keep looking at the structure. But the only other one we have is Rights Committee, which meets right before the board meeting. And we used to have a Consumer Advisory Committee that I need to look at reinstating in a real formal way.
Okay.
Yeah, so it'll give me some time, but I wanted to start with finance so that we make sure we get through that obligation first and then see what emerges. But it can also be as delayed as long as you want. But I will keep adding detail and precision to how contracts are analyzed and brought. You may find after next month, oh, I'll wait a little bit and see how it goes. Because I am hell-bent to make this board extremely comfortable with every financial document that comes before them. And I told you, like I said last week, that's my job.
Mhm.
If you have a contract and you can't vote yes, it's either because of a personal decision or I've done something wrong in the process. I have to make sure all the due diligence is done so that you can vote yes to every contract. Feeling that. And sometimes people vote no, and that's fine. It's people's prerogative, but I'll keep bringing the level of detail up and we can form this next month if you'd like.
Yeah, I think maybe being creative because it is going to be another monthly,
Yeah.
obligation. And I mean that respectfully when I say it.
Yeah.
But even being creative about how we conduct our meetings, possibly Zoom
Yeah.
as well.
Sure.
So, yeah, so maybe some more thought.
Yep.
about that. Absolutely. And you can do the recruitment.
Sounds great.
You're good at it.
Yeah.
All right. So then, okay, so moving on to further public comment. I apologize for that.
About spending in school. One of the things that Krista just mentioned was the gap in the 80 cent increase for our direct care workers that we're talking about. I want to tell you about another gap. We had a fall festival on Saturday, which was amazing and a lot of fun, a lot of people from the community coming. And I had a conversation with a woman and her son, and they're looking for a place for her son in specialized residential, and they've been looking at Ben's Hope. They know that we're opening 2 new homes, and she said, honestly, what's the opportunity that we might actually get into one of these homes? And my heart sunk because I knew the answer to that was probably not. We have 2 new homes opening 12 new beds, and we have about 150 people who have inquired. And one of the things that I've noticed, I'm new to the industry, and I've noticed that there's just a huge need and a huge lack of places for people to go. And one of the reasons for that is there's a gap of 68,000 for this 80-cent raise, but there's a $750,000 gap in the cost for our direct care workers over the year. So what we're doing is opening 2 more houses, which will only increase that gap, which honestly is a terrible financial decision, right? But we're doing it because we care about the people who are going to live in those homes. And so one of the things that we have to be challenged with, I think, or you have to be challenged with as a board is, what are the innovations that we can produce and think of? How can we think differently financially? How can we wrestle with the LRE and with the state and with the federal government around funding that actually cares for those additional 150 people who are just pleading for a place for their loved ones to live?
Absolutely. Thank you. No, housing is definitely at crisis level, especially with the most vulnerable.
I would echo any of that. Obviously, Peg Driesinga from Harbor House Ministries. I also want to just thank the board for your diligence and your inquiry into contracts and rates. I want to say, even though you were kind of kidding, as a provider, we would welcome metrics because there's great work happening in Ottawa County, and we would love the opportunity to show you the impact that it has on the lives, not only of the men and women we serve, but their families and their communities as well. I'm also a residential provider that is struggling financially. And so we want to do great work and we want to replicate what we're doing, but also enhance it further. But we have to not be drowning to be able to do that. And the need is increasing. It's increasing in Ottawa County. But because of the great work in Ottawa County, Board Member Byrd, you've heard somebody say, what if I moved to Ottawa County? I get phone calls from other countries and other states. The work is really excellent that's happening amongst all providers. But we want the opportunity to show you what we're doing, but also we need the funds to make it happen.
Thank you. I'm really interested in pulling together this kind of legislative panel, honestly, and maybe getting your voices there, obviously, to help speak into it. We need some real advocacy in Lansing, obviously. We spend a lot of money in this state on other things, yes. And yeah, housing, a roof over your head feels like a real basic need, so.
Peggy Fockler from the City of Holland. I am a parent of a young adult who has developmental disabilities. And my husband and I are both retired. We are still providing full-time care for our son because there's just such a lack of places for him to go. I'm retired and I can't do the kind of traveling that my peers are because I have to take care of my son every day. So there's needs, you know, and they are feeling this much and there's this much need in the county. I know a number of parents just like me who are caring for their sons and daughters at home that are retired, and we have no idea how long we're going to be doing this. Thank you.
Thank you.
And if I could
Please.
piggyback on
Yeah.
that, Peg, the fear amongst those parents is what happens when I'm no longer here to
Mhm.
provide that care? Will the system have resources to provide adequate care for my son or daughter?
I'm curious, how many voices do you represent between the two organizations? Yeah, how many, people? How many residents? Yeah, 36. Yeah. We do have a gap with 150 homes,
Yeah,
150.
just for those two specific
two.
programs, there's
Yeah.
probably 200 people waiting to get in.
That's a lot.
So it's a bigger voice because, you know, it's a roof over your head, but it's the type of roof over your head. And so we're blessed with programs that serve for excellence. The thing is, we need 10 more of them.
Keep coming because for good or bad, we garner a lot of attention here at the board. So keep coming, have your voices heard. In the meantime, I think we need to organize some sort of legislative day where you actually can speak to people who can make that change, affect that change. So, okay, wonderful.
Could I say something to that too?
Please.
We have a 37-year-old son who's with us too. And I can speak for 8 people I know that want a place for their kids too, but it's got to be a place that we want to put our child into. So we need those kind of choices. And I've talked to Dr. Brashears a little bit about it because we already have a roadmap in what you guys do. But there is a crisis because we're all getting older and we can't rely on our kids, you know, for everything because it is a lot. It is a
Pressure.
lot. So I appreciate what you guys do and hopefully we can emulate that.
Sure, sure, go ahead. Yeah, sure is.
I had a minute left.
I yield to the floor.
Tired, it's okay.
So one of the things that we providers discuss is the redundancy of administrative load that we carry. I serve 5 different counties with 5 different audits, 5 different reporting requirements, processes are extraordinary. If we could find a way to create actual efficiencies, we can operate more leanly, which means the Medicaid dollar goes further. Our rate increases wouldn't need to be perhaps what they are, but the redundancy is right now bearing providers all around the state.
Not lying.
Solution seeking. Come on up, come on up. We didn't say the meeting's adjourned, but come on up and talk. Yeah.
What you spoke of, I know our organization, all of us providers are willing to work with groups that want to come and do, you know, Harbor House was started by families that came together. And we work with organizations and we're not a competitive industry because we can't outserve the need. And so, you know, we are looking to replicate as groups come along that may want to be, and join and become part of the service. So
That's what I'm hoping. In fact, on social media the other day, someone posed the question for their parents. And they said, I've got a sibling and my parents are getting old. Is there anybody else that can help? We need facilities. And I can't tell you how many comments people were making and saying, let's do something, let's figure something out. So there is a big, big need.
And I want to say that the meeting is adjourned, but I want this dialogue. We're just going to say that it's adjourned at this point. I mean, if we need to have that, you know, the dialogue, I'm open to doing this because I want to be solution
great.
seeking rather than just.
Well, I'd like to
kinda-
tour the facilities
Yeah.
to see,
We'll
yeah.
get you over there.
Are there best practice models out there? Do you know of states that do it better than we do? Or
No,
is this
you have
just,
the-
I mean,
you
is
have
this
two-
just?
You have 2 best practices in the room.
Mhm.
The other, the people have come from all over the country to see their.
Oh,
programs.
yeah, I've
Good.
seen the one facility. It's
Well, there's
beautiful.
two, yes.
Yeah.
And so we're blessed with that. And the The
I'm just
reality
even thinking
is,
through the legislative process, though, are there states that do a better job?
I'll
at
tell you, the
it that
state of
we can-
Missouri, they did a study to say, how much do you need to pay people? It was a comprehensive study, and they were saying $20 to $25 an hour for direct care workers. I've given that information to the state. I've given it to the CMH system. They won't look at the study, but a state has done a comprehensive analysis of what do you need to pay people in 2024 to have excellence. Now, if Missouri can do it, we can do it. So we'll get a group together. Like I've said, this is the biggest challenge to the system of our time. And I've been accused of overstating it. I'm not overstating it. And so, yeah, we'll get legislative
think
folks
so.
together. We'll get families together, consumers together, because the state has to have a wake-up call. This is 1/3 of our expenditures for our CMH, and we're not even meeting it. We're not even meeting the need.
What I'd love to be able to bring to them is some sort of solution, an idea.
Oh, yeah.
That they can
Always
bring
bring a solution.
forward so that it helps with their, it's like elections, et cetera, the work that they're doing as well. The longer we kind of keep.
Yeah,
them
I'll
in,
put-
Even though they're termed out.
I'll
they-
put some ideas together, but I'll say it since we're off the clock, kind of. I think the funding model for specialized residential needs to be separated from the general mental health funding. We are forced to look at picking someone getting outpatient therapy versus residential care at the same bucket. It's not the same cost and it's not the same issue. A lot of states have this separated out, developmental disabilities versus mental health, residential expenditures, and there are special line items in the budget to help fund this. This is what needs to happen in Michigan. It's specialized residential care for folks with intellectual, developmental, mental health issues. Needs to be a separate budget that's funded accordingly. That will deal with this a lot. And that's what the regions were supposed to help us do, regionalize. It's
Mhm.
never come, all we end up is she's got 10 audits instead of 46. So it really hasn't shrunk the bureaucracy. But I'll put together ideas. We'll get a group together. Because this is the biggest challenge financially in the system.
We have Shannon McGoran here
Yeah.
too, that I think
Yeah.
would be helpful, like, and I think your team uses her at times too, just to kind of help pull a strategy together.
Yep.
To help you with those tools.
And I'm telling you, if we didn't have millage dollars helping support some of our residential providers, they'd be closed. I'm telling you right now, they'd have to close. You'd have to give notices almost immediately.
Oh, the generosity of this community is
Yes.
exceptional. It really truly is, but are we funding the right things?
Correct.
Right? And no disrespect to social rec at all. I
No.
don't mean that at all. I'm just really,
Yeah, we can walk and chew
It's
gum
like
at the same.
airway breathing circulation. You need a roof over your
Yeah.
head. Sure. Why not?
There are residential housing that uses social rec for their
Yep,
members.
Right.
And just putting people in four walls is not enough. They still need social connection. So it isn't one or the other. It's a collaboration of all of these
Oh,
services.
and they do.
And there's a
offer that.
whole continuum. So we need to meet people everywhere along that continuum.
Yeah, for sure.
Hi, Rosalie Austin, City of Holland, residential. It's gonna cost the same no matter what setting you're at. If you're in your private owned home, which with the self-directed option, there are self-directed homes where people do shared living, a roommate, they share the staff
You would
24/7.
consider that.
There's all kinds of possibilities out there already being done across this country that I'm so happy we're looking at all these options and alternatives and educating and informing each other about possibilities, what we can do. And like, can we have like friendship circle here, what they have on the east side of the state to bring that community in the
Yeah.
community. And STEP, what's that other place? Peckham, the job opportunities, all these, we don't have to recreate the wheel. It's already being done, has been done. We lost out on Can Do. That's a huge hole in activities for productivity and that.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's 2024.
And everyone struggles finding quality care, even direct care, self-DUIs in home or residential.
Her
We're all
strategy
competing for
too.
the same ones, but I would love to see more training, GRCC direct care.
You
I
gotta
would
sign something.
love
You gotta sign something.
it to be live with like my girl, learn with the most challenging,
You gotta sign
and
this.
then it would be better, I think. Because everyone wants easy. They don't want to work with wheelchairs. They don't want to lift. They only want to work from 10 AM to 2 PM.
You're right.
If it rains, they stay home and
You're not
good
lying.
help is hard to find.
Part of our strategy. Wonderful.
It's a
Thank
start.
you.
It's a start.
Exactly. We're gonna have free flow of
the
ideas and now
energy,
let's
ready
put
to
some
go.
structure into it. What are expectations? Thank you, everybody.
Just get to the right time at the meeting. I'm all set.